This is our second problem from the practice test, and it involves lists. We're going to write a function called getNames that will accept two arguments. The first one will be a list of names, strings, and the second one will be a single letter, also a string, and it will return a list of elements whose elements are all of the names from the original list whose name begins with the letter that was passed in. Okay, so if these are my names and I pass in a lowercase b, and it's clear from this that we should work for both upper and lowercase, so it's going to return Bob, Bill, Betty, and Brett. And if I do it with capital B, it should work. If I do it with a D, I should get Dave is the only one that starts with a D. And if I do it with an X, nobody starts with an X, so I should get 0 names. So what we're going to return is a list. Okay, so we got to start with an empty list and we have to build it. So let's flip over to our editor. And let's write another function up here. We want to put our functions at the top before the rest of the code. And this one is going to be called getNames. And we're going to pass in a list of names. And we're going to pass in a letter or an initial. Let's call it initial. Okay. So I need to create a new list that's going to be returned. So let's call it new list. And we'll do square brackets. And now what I want to do is I want to step through every single item in the list. So I'm going to do for n in names. So n will be the current name. And what I want to do is I want to check the first letter. So if the first letter of n, it's a string. N is a string. It's going to be the first time it'll be the first string in the list and the second string in the list, but every time it's just one string. It's not the list. So I can take the string, I can look at the first initial, and I can shift that to uppercase. And I want to know if that's equal to my initial dot uppercase. Okay. And if it is, then I'm going to add that to my new list. So new list equals new list plus, and I got to make this a list also, so I got to put n in square brackets. Okay. And if it's not equal, I don't do anything. When I get all done with this, I want to return new list. Okay. Now let's flip over to Word, and let's copy these lines of code. And we'll paste those in down here, and again we're going to have to move those back. So it doesn't tell us the names here, but we'll be able to figure out if they're the right ones or not, I think. So let's go ahead and run that. So I should get 4 names, and should be the B names with a lowercase b or a capital B. And if I pass in D, I get Dave. If I pass in X, I get an empty list. Okay, so that one's relatively straightforward. Just a little for loop that steps through every item in the list and creates a new list.